welcome. You're watching Primetime Debate. At a time when the economy is facing a slowdown and all eyes on the government for a growth stimulus, Prime Minister Narendra Modi today announced a scheme called Saugata with an aim to provide electricity connections to all Indian households by March 2019. Now, let's also tell you that this has been a poll promise of the BJP. The government announced it right in the beginning as well, but it has been reiterated. Now, the government will spend 16,300 crores on this. Not only this, the Prime Minister has also reconstituted or brought back the Economic Advisory Panel that he had done away with when he came to power. The panel will be headed by Bibek Debroy, who is member of the Niti Aayog, and will have 4 members as well. All of these announcements come at a day when the BJP had its national executive meet, where they reiterated their poll strategies. So that is really the big question today. How far will all of this go in setting the stage for the 2019 polls? To talk about this, I'm going to be speaking with former Power Secretary Anil Razdan, specifically, in fact, about what the strategy means for the power sector. Saugata Bhattacharya, Chief Economist at Axis Bank, is going to be joining me in just a bit. And I also have with me A.K. Bhattacharya, Managing Editor of the Business Standard, as well as Neerja Chowdhury, political commentator and columnist. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to start with Mr. Bhattacharya. 2 things, but first let's focus on Saugata. It is something that the government has been talking about time and again. The initial deadline was 2018, moved to 2019. Does the money which is promised now give it even a bigger push?
Well, if you allocate more money, you can expect some action on that front. But whether that is all that people expected after raising expectations by the finance minister about a week ago, that in consultation with his colleagues, that he's going to the prime minister and the prime minister will announce something. I would imagine that what you heard today is not the real economic revival agenda. This is just a sectoral push. It's a good initiative, but as you also rightly said, that the BJP had promised electricity for all in his election manifesto. So they're sort of giving it a new name. This party is very good at giving names, Saugata. And the real challenge would be, in my view, the last mile connectivity, because you can create power stations, you can generate the distribution agencies, you can introduce reforms in the distribution sector, in the transmission sector also. But unless you can take that electricity to the actual consumer, which is the household, I don't think you have achieved the real goals of the power sector development. So I think this goal, Saugata scheme, is essentially aimed at taking electricity to the household level to provide the last mile connectivity. Whether this is good enough, only time will tell. But it looks like a good initiative. But as I said, that this is no initiative to tackle the larger economic challenge that faces this government, which is of an economic slowdown.
Which is why we're reiterating the point that this is a promise that was made earlier. And
that's right.
And Neerja Chowdhury.
So it doesn't surprise me at all. On the contrary, it raises questions about BJP's expectations management, in the sense that you raise expectation that something big is coming, and then what comes is an economic advisory council announcement and electricity scheme.
Which is why I want to tie it into the bigger picture, and we're calling this a power push for polls, Neerja Chowdhury, because we're talking about electrification of all households. Prime Minister Modi mentioned 4 crore households which still live in the dark. He, of course, prefaced a lot of that by reinforcing the stated purpose of that this is a government for the poor. Economic Advisory Council comes at a time when economy is facing, some kind of sputter. It is becoming a political talking point as well. Do you see all of these tying in together?
Yeah, I think it's the politics of it that's very, very interesting this evening. I mean, the Prime Minister shows incredible, phenomenal stamina. He's having his, Navratra fast, and he goes on to outline in detail, having given the valedictory address at the National Executive of the BJP in the evening, then he goes on to outline his vision for the power sector. Of course, the larger package is still awaited to give a boost to the economy, but as I said, it's the politics of it. Now, the politics of it, as I read it, is that he has once again made a pro-poor pitch. There is an understanding within the government circles, and this came throughout the day today, that things are not very hunky-dory as far as the economy is concerned, and this may lead to political damage also, given that the elections are coming in Gujarat, various other states, and then 2019. Therefore, pro-poor pitch, once again, going for the jugular there. The 4 crore households who don't have Bijli, and he spelled out in great detail what it means for people to live without Bijli, what it means for children studying, what it means for women cooking, what it means for the safety of women who have to go out in the dark. So, pro-poor, pro-women. There again, you know, she linked it to Ujjwala scheme, gas cylinders being given, having to work on the chula, and now the new revolution that is in the offing, if this goes through, for women also, it's going to lighten their burden. And then actually saying that, you know, this is the thing we are now going to, you know, the sagging fortunes that we have looked at, you know, there are a lot of questioning on the job front that's taken place, young people not happy, 1 crore jobs promised, not delivered, even a few lakhs. So there is a lot of restiveness that is taking place, and the Prime Minister's catchment area is going to be the young. He said that in his Independence Day speech. We are going to target those who turn 18 on January 1, 2018. And those very young people are now questioning why loss of jobs, why no creation of jobs. Okay. And he's reaching out to them also. ONGC devise, you know, special innovation schemes. I want the youth to be part of it. So youth, women, the poor. Those are the 3 constituencies that the PM is targeting once again with this sectoral push that he's given today.
All right. I also have Anil Razdan, former Power Secretary, with me, and of course Saugata Bhattacharya joined us in the studio. But Mr. Razdan, just on the scheme that is announced, 16,000 odd crore rupees is going to be the total outlay. State governments have to come in with that last mile connectivity, and you know, we were just making a list of the top 10 states which have the most number of households which are still not electrified. 7 of them are BJP ruled. Will that make the job easier? And how new is this Saubhagya scheme compared to what the Prime Minister and the government has promised actually from day one? Yes, Mr. Razdan, can you hear me? All right, I seem to have lost the line there, but I'm going to try and get Anil Razdan back because I really want to understand how this works on ground. A.K. Bhattacharya also raised the point about electrification and actually bringing electricity to every household in a stable way. But Mr. Saugata, my question to you is in the broader picture. We are all waiting for some kind of a fiscal push. There are indications that that will come from more government spending. How does this power scheme tie into that picture?
I think this is a very important scheme. I mean, done as in a programmatic mode. So that's like the Swachh Bharat Yojana mission, etc. Spending more money need not necessarily get you the bang for the buck that you're looking for.
Yeah.
If they do this in a very focused manner, particularly, which is the very important thing that you focused on, that this is the BJP ruled states, BJP government states are the key, might be the key targets for this program. In addition to everything that we heard about in terms of the social empowerment of women, say particularly for instance, this also raises, I mean, this is again from a very crass economic perspective, that stimulus that we were talking about. Remember, the more you get electricity, stable quality electricity, immediately your demand for a whole lot of consumer durables, which were completely beyond, something that increases. So that's an immediate economic impact. I'm not even talking of increasing productivity of a lot of households. I mean, you know, for children coming in from school going age, from education perspective and so on. In a very crass materialistic fashion, that thing that we are talking about, incentivizing economic activity. This is it. So, I mean, you know, the tail, I mean, once you're more refrigerators, more television sets, etc., begin to come into from the tier 3, tier 4 cities down into the rural areas, the market begins to expand. Job opportunities for servicing these instruments, these begin to expand. So I think it's a good.
No, absolutely. But just, to bring the point which Mr. Bhattacharya was also making, by definition, a village is electrified even if there are electric poles in the village square. Then we're talking about the quality of electricity.
Right.
Want someone to buy a refrigerator,
Right.
Even if they are in that income bracket, they will pay for it if they know that they will get electricity for X number of hours a day.
You're completely right. But this is exactly what Mr. Modi did in Gujarat. So the first thing in separating farm electricity meters from rural electricity, the household meters. I mean, if we can push together something like this, so I mean, ensuring electricity for farm implements at a certain time, electricity throughout the day, or lower voltage electricity for households. That also, I mean, there's a lot of power available. I mean, there's a huge amount of wastage of electricity. So, I mean, if you can just get that wastage thing right, like you did in Gujarat, very effectively. So, if you can get moving on that, I think that will free up a lot of lower cost electricity for rural households.
Just one more comment from you on the Economic Advisory Council before, we get everyone in. And of course, this is an open debate. So, Neerja, Chowdhury and A.K. Bhattacharya, please, indicate when you want to come in. But on the Economic Advisory Council, this government disbanded with that, operation and changed the Planning Commission to the Niti Aayog. There used to be this kind of a body then. In your view, does it also have something to do with the impact of GST and demonetization as we're seeing now? We've talked about a whole push, and this is one step towards it, at least a team in place who can guide that process?
I would think so, because remember the task of Niti Aayog is a bit of a strategic think tank. I mean, don't get into the down and dirty of everyday policy, everyday practice implementation, governance, this, that, the kind of things that we do. Set out a longer term vision, and I think the composition of the Economic Advisory Council is more or less, I think, on the right lines, that with different things and the ability to think out of the box. So, I mean, overall, I mean, let's see how the advice of the Advisory Council is implemented. But as a principle, I mean, it's nothing to do with the old PM Economic Advisory Council. In a new role, I mean, it's the role that is assigned to this council. So we wait and watch what happens.
So I was just reading what is as their stated mission. Of course, to advise the Prime Minister on economic or any matters, take suo moto, notice of a lot of issues, as well as anything else that the Prime Minister may ask. So, of course, there's a broad brush over there. But Mr. Bhattacharya, just your comment on the Economic Advisory Council coming as it does right now. We were speaking to Mr. Rangarajan a little while earlier, and he said that it's a good move. They will have to focus on how to kickstart investment. What does this body now mean?
Well, first I would say that this is a political response to the political criticism of this government, that this government doesn't have economists to advise it. And Raghuram Rajan left. Then, a day ago, Arvind Subramanian's term has been extended by a year, and there were Arvind Panagaria left. So there was this, widespread feeling that this government doesn't know how to have top-notch, top-rated economists as part of its economic think tanks. So I think this creating this Economic Advisory Council is actually responding to that criticism, which is even voiced in international publications. In Financial Times yesterday only talked about this problem about this is a government that doesn't listen to economic advice. So I think this is a response number one. Number two, this Economic Advisory Council has got, the chairman is a very trusted person who's trusted by the Prime Minister. And he has got the part-time members, they are part-time members, mind you, and it has got a member secretary who is the former Finance Secretary, Ratan Watul. Now, so I think they can certainly deliver, and it will provide some sort of, intellectual bandwidth to this government, which I'm afraid this government did not have in the first 3 years of its existence. I mean, it had Niti Aayog, but... This is a kind of an attempt to strengthen this economic bandwidth and of this government.
I mean,
So
I don't know. Do you agree with that, Neerja Chowdhury? Because Vivek Debroy has been working with the government for the last few years. Of course, in his capacity as member of the Niti Aayog. Arvind Subramaniam has got a one-year extension.
Yeah.
Do you see all of this as a response or a management response to the current situation?
I think, yes, it's number one, an acknowledgement that things are not going well on the economic front. Whatever they may say about demonetization and the GST, of course, it yielded a political dividend, but on the economic front, it has led to the slowing down of the economy as also the loss of jobs. And that has political fallout. So it is an admission that they are concerned about it, and he wants to redress the situation with elections coming around the corner. I think also, obviously, the Prime Minister feels the need for more advice from economists. And also, this is an admission that he needs to go beyond the Finance Ministry's advice. So, to have disbanded it when he came to power, this kind of a council, and now to reconstitute it with his own trusted people, and these people will have to work very, very closely with the Prime Minister himself.
Then let's come to what advice now this Economic Council must give. And we've been talking to pretty much everyone on this. We asked Mr. Rangarajan as well, and everyone seems to agree that you have to push private investment. But how, in the current scenario, what would you enlist as, say, the top 5 priorities?
Wow.
Okay, top 3?
That's even worse. No, I mean, again, I don't know what the Council of Economists will do. I think Dr. Arvind Subramaniam focused on the key hindrance. The problem, as we all know, has been private investment, as you pointed out. And the key thing that is hindering private investment is what Dr. Subramaniam calls the twin balance sheet problem. So, I mean, on the one hand, corporates are highly leveraged, their cash flows are not improving. And on the other hand, I mean, banks have a lot of exposure to them, so their balance sheets are stressed. So I think this is the core part. And the government has already started with one of the very major reforms in this, the insolvency and bankruptcy code. So on top of this, consumption is okay and things. I think one of the key things that I would like to see, that I'm very interested about, not knowledgeable, but interested about, is the Prime Minister's mission of doubling farm incomes.
Yes.
I think that is a very, very critical thing. Without doing that, I don't think there is much hope of the rest of the manufacturing and services segment. So I hope, I'm not very sure. I think I would have liked to see an agricultural specialist on this panel.
Yeah, and that is by 2022, in fact, with the whole New India program. Anil Razdan is on the phone line with us, former Power Secretary. So I hope you can hear me. I just wanted your comment on the whole Saubhagya mission. The outlay is about 16,000 odd crores. The deadline is in 2019. 100% electricity, and in fact some sort of a subsidy for a certain bracket of households of 500 rupees to be payable in 10 installments to the electricity provider. Do you think it's a formula that works?
See, it's something which is almost a decade old. We tried to first take electricity to all villages. Now, the survey of the villages, what is the definition of a village, what are the definition of electrification, all this has undergone modification. And today we've come to a situation where after having spent tens of thousands of crores, we've decided finally, yes, we have to take it to every home. But taking electricity to every home is only one part of the problem. To make it sustainable, a sustainable commercial venture is, I think, the more difficult part. And here, I think, unless we look at payment solutions, number one, nobody can afford to have electricity at home unless he has a meter or in every workplace. It must be a foolproof arrangement. Number two, we've got to also take into account that every consumer cannot probably afford to pay the bill if electricity flows uninterrupted in a fashion. So you take a lesson from the telecom sector. And there you see you have the prepaid choice. So here you have prepaid metering. You decide what your budget is, or if the government is going to subsidize this program, then you give that money by direct benefit transfer. Let the gentleman or the lady decide, whoever is running the household, that, okay, if I have to spend 200 rupees or 500 rupees on my household electricity, this is how I'm going to plan. Let that person get a prepaid meter connection. And when that money is exhausted, his electricity is off. Because electricity is a commercial business. And those in the generating sector, the transmitting sector, and the distribution companies, they've got to keep the businesses sustainable.
Mr. Razdan, there is a huge push that this government has had on alternate energy as well as a solution, to all of those points that you made about, being able to afford and, of course, clean energy, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that that's where much of the push also needs to come?
Absolutely. You see, because I believe that you have to do a spatial reassessment of your electricity demand sector. Everybody cannot be put on grid power. Some areas are remote and it's uneconomic to put them on grid power, or even if you take the wires there, you may not be able to maintain them for a 24/7 supply. There are harsh climatic conditions, there are terrain conditions there which are adverse, or maybe just wear and tear or sheer mischief in places. So you've got to spatially decide which are the areas you're going to take up on renewable power and which are the areas you're going to take up on grid power. Today, actually, the cost of renewable power has come down substantially. It's almost only 10% or 15% of what it was a little more than a decade back. That's very good news. And technology is also stabilized. But wherever you have renewable power, because wind and sunshine are not going to be there 24 hours,
all right. No, but all that renewable power, and I'll just wrap with this comment from you, sir, all that renewable power and all of that push is not going to happen by 2019. But, of course, there is an election in 2019, and the economy needs to show like it's doing better by then.
As with everything, with commercial business, you need to focus. So what are the key, the easiest areas that you can go to with the easiest access, probably the thing that you mentioned, that where can you work with the governments in a manner which is the easiest access? So you have to take the low-hanging fruits first, and then after that begin to spread geographically, spatially, whatever Mr. Razdan was talking about. So I think he needs to decide, like in Gujarat, which are the states that are most amenable for rapid electrification. Focus on those first. Show some results in some pilot areas or whatever, yes. And then use that to replicate the success of those experiments.
Absolutely. So two major decisions today. A new scheme which promises to bring 100% electricity to 100% households by 2019, and of course a new body which will advise the Prime Minister has been announced, headed by Bibek Debroy. Will it help work things out? Will it now this council have a lot of specific, concrete suggestions to make in the days to come is, of course, what we'll watch. And what we're also observing is how this all ties up to a 2019 port push. Thank you so much, Neerja, Chowdhury, A.K. Bhattacharya, Mr. Razdan, and, of course, Mr. Bhattacharya for joining us on this conversation. But on Primetime Debate, we're also now playing out for you what Harsh Mariwala said today. Small and medium businesses were the worst hit by demonetization and the goods and service tax rollout. That's the word coming from the chairman of Marico, Harsh Mariwala. Speaking to BloombergQuint, Mariwala said that for the rural segment in particular, it is tough to assess whether the slowdown is demand-related or due to GST.
Both these initiatives have had shall I say, more severe impact than what we had imagined. And we are still coming out of the GST implementation. As far as Marico is concerned, I think the negative impact is more in the wholesale business and in rural areas. But when I talk to some smaller and medium-sized industry owners, I realize that the impact is much more on them.
At least from your business point of view, can you give me a sense of what the GST hit has been like in numbers?
Larger companies, the impact is much lesser. The impact was more in the month of June prior to GST launch. It's much lesser in this quarter. In fact, except for these two sectors, which is wholesale and rural, I think things are back to normal. So I would say that we will return back to a growth trajectory in this quarter. But I think the impact is much more for smaller and medium-sized industries, and that's where there is a higher worry in terms of what will happen to them.
How do we get to know the depth of the problem in the wholesale and rural industries, in the informal segments of the economy?
I think we have to wait and watch and see, is this impact transitionary, or it's likely to be more long-term? And to some extent, it will be a combination of both. So let's wait and watch for a period of 1 or 2 months. But from what I hear from many players, that their sales are down in this quarter by almost 30 to 50%. In our case, it's higher than last quarter, so it's okay.
Can you give us a little bit of an idea about what's happening in the rural market
Yes.
in particular, sir?
To some extent, rural demand is getting impacted because of the GST transition. So I'm not able to clearly identify, is there a demand issue or is it a GST issue, and within GST again it's a transition issue, or it's a permanent impact because of GST.
All right, that's pretty much all in prime time. I'll just leave you with one comment we got from Premal Vinci on the entire discussion, who says, even if it is for gains in polls, we should be happy that something good is happening. Everyone will have light to study, to cook, to play. Well, that is really a fair point. On that note, we wrap it here on Primetime Debate, but stay tuned to BloombergQuint.